Kobe did not lose the feud in one final battle. It began to collapse when key allies started leaving, and soon even the Yamaken-gumi began to waver. In July 2020, Ikeda Takashi formally announced his withdrawal from the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi. Inside the Kobe headquarters, boss Inoue Kunio faced a grim reality. The loss of key allies was stripping the organization of its future. From his prison cell, Nakata Koji, who had inherited the fifth-generation Yamaken-gumi from Inoue, weighed the survival of his group. He reached a cold conclusion. Under the current banner, they had no future. Through his legal advisor, Nakata informed his men that he would sever ties with the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi. Inoue was powerless to stop him. Having relinquished the chairman's seat, he held no leverage over Nakata. Through a formal letter, Nakata declared the Yamaken-gumi's independence, turning an internal rift into a fatal, irreversible break. Confined and restricted to lawyers' messages, Nakata still managed to engineer the split from behind bars. Inside the Yamaken-gumi, the divide deepened and loyalties were permanently redrawn. Subordinates passed the chairman's withdrawal declaration through the corridors, cementing the formal rupture. For investigators, the question was no longer if they would reconcile, but whether Kobe had just lost its beating heart. A veteran insider noted that the name Yamaken-gumi carried a prestige neither side was willing to surrender. Ultimately, the Yamaken-gumi formally defected, dealing a catastrophic blow to the Kobe alliance. 1 year later, the Yamaken-gumi officially apologized to Takayama Kiyoshi and submitted to the sixth-generation Yamaguchi-gumi. But the bleeding did not stop there. Friendly syndicates aligned with Kobe also began to quietly fracture. In Kyoto, the battle over sponsorship and legitimacy exposed how rapidly Kobe's influence was evaporating. When Kobe initially rebelled, Kyoto's prestigious Aizu Kotetsu Kai revoked its backing of Tsukasa Shinobu, drawing fierce retaliation. That decision triggered an immediate uprising from pro-Kodokai factions within the Kyoto Syndicate. In January 2017, the pro-Kodokai faction seized the headquarters, falsely claiming the seventh-generation chairman had retired. The Yamaken-gumi struck back, retaking the headquarters and expelling the rebels. But the rebels simply established their own seventh-generation Aizu Kotetsu Kai, tearing the historic organization in two. As Kobe weakened, the faction relying on its support collapsed, ending the split within the Aizu Kotetsu Kai. The power struggle concluded when a direct boss under the sixth-generation Yamaguchi-gumi took the eighth-generation chairman's seat. The same pattern repeated in Osaka, where the traditional Sakao Megumi initially backed Kobe due to personal blood ties with Inoue. Early in the feud, the Sakao Megumi also severed ties with the sixth generation to align with Kobe. They never formally split, but as Kobe withered, their ninth-generation boss retired, draining their remaining influence. Ultimately, the 10th-generation Sakao Megumi surrendered, returning to the shadow of the 6th generation. The name Yamaguchi-gumi and the diamond crest still dictated money, prestige, and power across the underworld. Executives insisted the name was their absolute pride, something they would rather die than abandon. Even Oda's splinter group initially clung to the name, fueling the chaotic three-way standoff. But in February 2020, they finally tore down their sign, rebranding themselves simply as the Kizuna Kai. The underworld recognized this as a total capitulation to the sixth generation's overwhelming pressure. Dropping the name could not halt their decline. Oda's faction now struggled to survive without the legendary crest. In August 2020, Ikeda Koji abruptly retired, signaling that even the fiercest critics were abandoning the war. For the Kizuna Kai, this retreat cost them money, territory, and the men they desperately needed. By September 2020, internal violence erupted within the Kizuna Kai camp, ending in a bloody shooting outside a Nagano ramen shop. The head of the Takekuchi Gumi had begun signaling his intent to defect to the Kodokai. A former boss attempted to stop him, and when words failed, he opened fire. When the Takeuchi Gumi drifted toward the Kodokai, the Kizuna Kai lost one of its final organizational anchors. These defections proved that the rebel forces could no longer hold their defensive lines. The collapse soon reached the highest echelons of the Kobe leadership. Masaki Toshio announced his retirement, removing yet another foundational pillar from the rebellion. To the foot soldiers, the message was clear. The elite no longer believed victory was possible. Yasuoka Toshijo retired simultaneously, turning individual surrender into a mass exodus. Violence spilled into Iwakuni, exposing the vulnerability of peripheral groups still tied to the rebels. The Kimura Gumi's surrender proved that smaller factions were ruthlessly recalculating who could ensure their survival. An attack on the Kumamoto Gumi office in Kurashiki revealed just how unstable Kobe's outer defenses had become. Each strike forced the exhausted Kobe faction to bleed resources defending outposts it could no longer hold. In June 2021, Fujihara Kenji formally submitted his group's dissolution papers to the Okayama police. The rebel network was rapidly disintegrating into isolated, defenseless remnants. As Yakuza numbers plummeted nationwide, the sixth generation unexpectedly absorbed 200 new men, widening an insurmountable gap. Inoue vowed to fight to the bitter end, but willpower could not replace lost armies. The power disparity became absolute as the sixth generation methodically reclaimed its lost empire. By 2020, the Yamaguchi Gumi's total forces had dropped from over 13,000 to under 4,000, a dying underworld. But Kobe's collapse was catastrophic. In just 6 years, their ranks withered to slightly over 1,000 men. These were not mere statistics. They were the hard currency of survival, territory, and power. Once the name could no longer command loyalty, the war had entered its final, agonizing stage. Heavy police deployments had become a permanent fixture of city life under the crushing crackdown. A senior official noted a cold reality. The organizations were dying, but the threat of violence lingered. Mounting indictments proved the conflict was only being suffocated through relentless legal force. Record seizures and arrests demonstrated the state's unyielding grip. The police strategy was absolute: maintain maximum pressure until the syndicates could never rebuild. Inside the once bustling offices, silence replaced the daily routines that had sustained the empire. The Kobe headquarters still stood, but only as a hollow shell. Without the Yamakan-gumi, the balance of power was permanently shattered. On April 4, 2025, the Yamaguchi-gumi unilaterally declared the feud over. It was not a negotiation. It was an execution. Kobe had lost the long war.